Chapter 13. The Sisyphus. You are not tired, I hope, of hearing about the scavenger beetles with a talent for making balls. I have told you of the sacred beetle and of the Spanish copperas, and now I wish to say a few words of yet another of these creatures. In the insect world, we meet with a great many model mothers. It is only fair for once to draw attention to a good father. Now, a good father is rarely seen except among the higher animals. The bird is excellent in this respect, and the furred folk perform their duties honorably. Lower in the scale of living creatures, the father is generally indifferent to his family. Very few insects are exceptions to this rule. This heartlessness, which would be detestable in the higher ranks of the animal kingdom, where the weakness of the young demands prolonged care, is excusable among insect fathers. For the robustness of the newborn insect enables it to gather its food unaided, provided it be in a suitable place. When all that the purest need do for the safety of the race is to lay her eggs on the leaves of a cabbage, of what use would a father's care be? The mother's botanical instinct needs no assistance. At laying time, the other parent would be in the way. Most insects adopt this simple method of upbringing. They merely choose a dining room, which will be the home of the family once it is hatched, or else a place that will allow the young ones to find suitable fare for themselves. There is no need for the father in such cases. He generally dies without lending the least assistance in the work of setting up his offspring in life. Things do not always happen, however, in quite such a primitive fashion. There are tribes that provide a dowry for their families, that prepare board and lodging for them in advance. The bees and wasps in particular are masters in the industry of making cellars, jars, and satchels, in which the ration of honey is hoarded. They are perfect in the art of creating burrows stocked with the game that forms the food of their grubs. Well, this enormous labor, which is one of building and provisioning combined, this toil in which the insect's whole life is spent, is done by the mother alone. It wears her out. It utterly exhausts her. The father, drunk with sunlight, stands idle at the edge of the work yard, watching his plucky helpmate at her job. Why does he not lend the mother a helping hand? It is now or never. Why does he not follow the example of the swallow couple, both of whom bring their bit of straw, their blob of mortar to the building, and their midge to the young ones? He does nothing of the kind. Possibly he puts forward his comparative weakness as an excuse. It is a poor argument, for to cut a disc out of a leaf, to scrape some cotton from a downy plant, to collect a little bit of cement in muddy places would not overtax his strength. He could very easily help at any rate as a laborer. He is quite fit to gather materials for the mother, with her greater intelligence, to fit in place. The real reason for his inactivity is sheer incapability. It is strange that the most gifted of the industrial insects should know nothing of a father's duties. One would expect the highest talents to be developed in him by the needs of the young. But he remains as dull-witted as a butterfly, whose family is reared at so small a cost. We are baffled at every turn by the question, why is a particular instinct given to one insect and denied to another? It baffles us so thoroughly that we are extremely surprised when we find in the scavenger the noble qualities that are denied to the honey-gatherer. Various scavenger beetles are accustomed to help in the burden of housekeeping and know the value of working in double harness. The Geotrops couple, for instance, prepare their larva's food together. The father lends his mate the assistance of his powerful press in the manufacture of the tightly packed sausage-shaped ration. He is a splendid example of domestic habits, and one extremely surprising amid the general egoism. To this example, my constant studies of the subject have enabled me to add 3 others, all furnished by the Guild of Scavengers. One of them is the Sisyphus, the smallest and most zealous of all our pill rollers. He is the liveliest and most agile of them all, and recks nothing of awkward somersaults and headlong falls on the impossible roads to which his obstinacy brings him back again and again. It was in reference to these wild gymnastics that Latreille gave him the name of Sisyphus. As you know, that unhappy wretch of classical fame had a terrible task. He was forced to roll a huge stone uphill, and each time he succeeded in toiling to the top of the mountain, the stone slipped from his grasp and rolled to the bottom. I like this myth. It is the history of a good many of us. So far as I am concerned, For half a century and more I have painfully climbed the steep ascent, spending my strength recklessly in the struggle to hoist up to safety that crushing burden, my daily bread. Hardly is the loaf balanced when it slips off, slides down, and is lost in the abyss. The Sisyphus with whom we are now concerned knows none of these bitter trials. Untroubled by the steep slopes, he gaily trundles his load, at one time bread for himself, at another bread for his children. He is very scarce in these parts, and I should never have managed to secure a suitable number of subjects for my studies had it not been for an assistant whom I have already mentioned more than once. I speak of my little son Paul, age 7. He is my enthusiastic companion on my hunting expeditions, and knows better than anyone of his age the secrets of the cicada, the locust, the cricket, and especially the scavenger beetle. 20 paces away, his sharp eyes will distinguish the real mound that marks a burrow from casual heaps of earth. His delicate ears catch the grasshopper's faint song, which is quite unheard by me. He lends me his sight and hearing, and I, in exchange, present him with ideas, which he receives attentively. Little Paul has his own insect cages, in which the sacred beetle makes pairs for him. His own little garden, no larger than a pocket handkerchief, where he grows beans, often digging them up to see if the tiny roots are any longer. His forest plantation, in which stand 4 oaks a hand's breadth high, still furnished on one side with the acorn that feeds them. It all makes a welcome change from grammar, which gets on none the worse for it. When the month of May is near at hand, Paul and I get up early one morning, so early that we start without our breakfast, and we explore at the foot of the mountain the meadows where the flocks have been. Here we find the Sisyphus. Paul is so zealous in his search that we soon have a sufficient number of couples. All that is needed for their well-being is a wire gauze cover with a bed of sand and a supply of their food, to obtain which we too turn scavengers. These creatures are so small, hardly the size of a cherry stone, and so curious in shape, a dumpy body, the hind end of which is pointed, and very long legs, resembling a spider's when outspread. The hind legs are of amazing length and are curved, which is most useful for clasping and squeezing the pellet. Soon the time comes for establishing the family. With equal zeal, father and mother alike take part in kneading, carding, and stowing away the provisions for the young ones. With the cleaver of the forelegs, a morsel of the right size is cut from the food placed at their disposal. The 2 insects work at the piece together, giving it little pats, pressing it, and shaping it into a ball as large as a big pea. As in the sacred beetle's workshop, the accurately round shape is obtained without the mechanical trick of rolling the ball. The material is modeled into a sphere before it is moved, before it is even loosened from its support. Here, once more, we have an expert in geometry familiar with the best form for preserving food. The ball is soon ready. It must now, by vigorous rolling, be given the crust which will protect the soft stuff within from becoming too dry. The mother, who can be recognized by her slightly larger size, harnesses herself in the place of honor in front. With her long hind legs on the ground and her forelegs on the ball, she hauls it towards her backwards. The father pushes behind in the reverse position, head downwards. It is precisely the same method as that of the sacred beetle when working in twos, but it has another object. The Sisyphus team conveys a store of food for the grubs, whereas the big pill rollers trundle a banquet, which they themselves will eat up underground. The couple start off along the ground. They have no definite goal, but walk in a direct line, without regard to the obstacles that lie in the way. In this backward march, the obstacles could not be avoided. But even if they were seen, the Sisyphus would not try to go round them, for she even makes obstinate attempts to climb the wirework of my cage. This is an arduous and impossible task. Clawing the meshes of the gauze with her hind legs, the mother pulls the load towards her. Then, putting her forelegs round it, she holds it suspended in air. The father, finding nothing to stand upon, clings to the ball, encrusts himself in it, so to speak, thus adding his weight to that of the lump, and taking no further pains. The effort is too great to last. The ball and its rider, forming one mass, fall to the floor. The mother, from above, looks down for a moment in surprise, and then drops to recover the load and renew her impossible attempt to scale the side. After repeated falls, the climb is abandoned. Even on level ground, the carting is not carried on without difficulty. At every moment, the load swerves on some mound made by a bit of gravel, and the team topples over and kicks about upside down. This is a trifle, the merest trifle. These tumbles, which so often fling the Sisyphus on his back, cause him no concern. One would even think he liked them. After all, the ball has to be hardened and made of the right consistency. And this being the case, bumps, falls, and jolts are all part of the program. This mad steeple chasing goes on for hours. At last, the mother, regarding the work as completed, goes off a little way in search of a suitable spot. The father mounts guard, squatting on the treasure. If his companion's absence is unduly long, he relieves his boredom by spinning the ball nimbly between his uplifted hind legs. He treats his precious pellet as a juggler treats his ball. He tests its perfect shape with his curved legs, the branches of his compasses. No one who sees him frisking in that jubilant attitude can doubt his lively satisfaction, the satisfaction of a father assured of his children's future. "It is I," he seems to say, "I who kneaded this round loaf, I who made this bread for my sons," and he lifts on high, for all to see, this magnificent testimony to his industry. Meanwhile, the mother has chosen a site for the burrow. A shallow pit is made, a mere beginning of the work. The ball is rolled near it. The father, that vigilant guardian, does not let go, while the mother digs with her legs and forehead. Soon the hollow is big enough to hold the pellet. She insists on having it quite close to her. She must feel it bobbing up and down behind her, on her back, safe from parasites, before she decides to go farther. She is afraid of what might happen to it if it were left on the edge of the burrow until the home was completed. There are plenty of midges and other such insects to grab it. One cannot be too careful. The ball therefore is inserted half in and half out of the partly formed basin. The mother, underneath, gets her legs rounded and pulls. The father above lets it down gently and sees that the hole is not choked up with falling earth. All goes well. The digging is resumed, and the descent continues, always with the same caution. One of the insects pulling the load, the other regulating the drop and clearing away anything that might hinder the operation. A few more efforts, and the ball disappears underground with the two miners. What follows for some time to come can only be a repetition of what has already been done. We must wait half a day or so. If we keep careful watch, we shall see the father come up again to the surface by himself and crouch in the sand near the burrow. Detained below by duties in which her companion can be of no assistance to her, the mother usually postpones her appearance till the morrow. At last, she shows herself. The father leaves the place where he was snoozing and joins her. The reunited couple go back to the spot where their foodstuffs are to be found, and having refreshed themselves, they gather up more materials. The two then set to work again. Once more they model, cart, and store the ball together. I am delighted with this constancy. That is really the rule I dare not declare. There must, no doubt, be flighty, fickle beetles. No matter. The little I have seen gives me a high opinion of the domestic habits of the Sisyphus. It is time to inspect the burrow. At no great depth, we find a tiny niche, just large enough to allow the mother to move round her work. The smallness of the chamber tells us that the father cannot remain there for long. When the studio is ready, he must go away to leave the sculptress room to turn. The contents of the cellar consist of a single ball, a masterpiece of art. It is a copy of the sacred Beetles pear on a very much reduced scale, its smallness making the polish of the surface and the elegance of the curves all the more striking. Its diameter, at the broadest point, measures 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. One more observation about the Sisyphus. 6 couples under the wire gauze cover gave me 57 pairs containing 1 egg each, an average of over 9 grubs to each couple. The sacred beetle is far from reaching this figure. To what cause are we to attribute this large brood? I can see but one, the fact that the father works as well as the mother. Family burdens that would exceed the strength of one are not too heavy when there are two to bear them.